When you change stitch patterns, yarn colors, and even needle sizes, you may encounter unexpected problems in your knitted fabric. In this week's Technique Tuesday video, I'll demonstrate how to improve the transition from stockinette fabric to ribbing, a situation knitters face at the cuffs and hems of top-down sweaters. This swatch is simulating the stockinette body of a sweater or the stockinette sleeve of a sweater that's being worked top down. So far, I have been working this on a US size 7 needle, which is a 4.5 millimeter, and I am getting ready to switch to the ribbing. So I want to work the ribbing on a smaller needle, and I also want to work in a different color for the ribbing. So even if you were only going to do one of these two things, just switching the needle size or keeping your needle size the same but switching to a different color, you would do this as well. In my imaginary sweater, I want to work one more row of stockinette before I switch to the ribbing, or one more round of stockinette if I'm working in the round. So before I work that final row or round of stockinette, this is the time when I'm going to change my needle size and I'm going to change my color. So if you're only need to do one of those things, you're still going to do that one thing. So rather than continuing with the size 7 needle, I'm going to get my size 5 needle. I don't have to transfer these stitches to another needle. They can stay as they are. So I'm going to work my final purl row, but I'm going to work it in a different color. So I'm going to cut my yarn and I'm going to join the new color. But I'm still going to be working in stockinette. And because I'm working flat, I need to work a purl row. Okay, I'm finishing up my purl row. I'm going to put aside my other size 7 needle and pick up the second size 5 needle. So now I've got both of the small needles. So what has happened? I have worked that final row of stockinette. Those blue stitches that were on the needle are now underneath the needle. Those were the stitches that were worked in stockinette. The stitches that are on the needle were just created as new loops, and they were created in a smaller size. So these loops are in the correct color and they are in a smaller size than the stitches down here. So these were not worked as purls. The blue stitches that came off the needle were the ones that were worked as purls. They were continuing the stockinette. So now when I'm ready to actually start the ribbing, I will have the green stitches that I want on the needle. They will be a smaller loop size than the stockinette fabric, and I can work them the way that I want. So I'm going to start working them in a knit purl pattern. So now, as I'm working in ribbing, the green stitches that are on my left-hand needle are the ones that are becoming the ribbing underneath the needle. So I have finished that first row of actual ribbing, and you can see I have a row of green stitches underneath the needle that are in ribbing, and the blue stitches are all in the stockinette as I want them. So now I can continue with my smaller needles working my ribbing. So this is the swatch after I finished doing the ribbing and binding off. So it's a very even transition from the blue stockinette to the green ribbing. So what happens if you don't do that? What would have happened if I had worked that final row in blue with my larger needles and waited until this first right side row to switch to ribbing. So this is a swatch where I didn't change needle size, but I waited to change the color until I was actually starting the ribbing, and here's where you can see the problem. So what we have is the first row of ribbing ended up being blue, and so you've got a blue pearl bump here. So you've got this row of blue ribbing at the base of the green ribbing. So you get that color disruption, and you also end up with fewer rows of the ribbing in the correct color because you end up with that extra row of blue. One other problem that you might see, I don't tend to see it in my own knitting, but every knitter is different, and I have seen it in other knitters' work. And that is, if you wait to change your needle size to this beginning of the row where you're going to start working the ribbing, that row of ribbing that comes off the needles, it's at the base right here. So in this case, it would be these blue stitches. Because those stitches were created on a larger needle, they may be even more enlarged than the rest of the ribbing. So Knit One Purl One ribbing tends to have more enlarged stitches than Stockinette to begin with, but it may be exacerbated in that first row of ribbing if you don't change your needle size first, right before you're working that final row. This video showed you how to improve the transition from stockinette to ribbing. The situation is different when you transition in the other direction from ribbing to stockinette. I have a video on that topic right over here. If you're interested in learning more about avoiding color blips in your fabric when you are working with color and texture at the same time, you might like this video over here. If you have any comments or questions about today's video or suggestions for videos you would like to see in the future, you can leave those down in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.